As soon as they retreated, hundreds of zombies surged forward to attack. Zhang Yi opened a dimensional portal and ordered everyone to enter. He was the first to step in, and the others quickly followed. Just as the zombies rushed to chase after them, the portal vanished, causing the undead to slam into the invisible barrier in confusion. They stood still, disoriented, convinced their prey had just been there. The portal reappeared outside the subway. Zhang Yi and his group stepped out safely. He exhaled in relief, admitting that the escape had been nerve-wracking. Lien, filled with excitement, asked if Zhang Yi now had a teleportation ability. Zhang Yi explained it wasn't a new power, but rather a deeper understanding of his versatile portal technique. Chun, still shaken, complained that he should have told them about this sooner. She had nearly died from the fear. This zombie crisis was turning out to be far more complex than they had anticipated. Even now, Zhang Yi didn't know how the situation would end. Uncle Yu asked what their next move should be. Under pressure, Zhang Yi took a moment to calm himself by filling his lungs with smoke, easing some of the tension. Though there was no clear solution yet, he felt a strong urge to resolve the issue quickly. Lien asked what the next step was, as Zhang Yi's words hadn't yet offered any real plan or direction. Zhang Yi explained that dealing with the zombies wasn't the hardest part. Even though they were infected with a virus, their bodies were still vulnerable to cold. If exposed long enough, they would freeze and become immobile. He already had a plan. The subway lines in this region weren't complex, there was only one secondary route. And zombies typically hid in tunnels to avoid the cold. Zhang Yi drew something on the ground and explained. There was a way to control the zombies within the tunnels for a short time, and seal them in permanently. He suspected that seawater might be the key. Lien was stunned, calling the idea brilliant. Because of the tunnel's simple layout, they could flood it quickly with seawater. Uncle Yu listened as Lien explained that by flooding the tunnels, the zombies would be submerged. And if the zombie king was still alive, even he wouldn't survive that. Zhang Yi decided they needed to consult their technical expert before carrying out the plan. They had to return immediately. Back at the Xing headquarters, Hong Lian was disappointed by her team's report. The last images she received showed her elite agents dying at the hands of the zombies underground. Her assistant was alarmed. He hadn't expected there to be so many zombies beneath the city. If they all attacked at once, they would lose. The assistant suggested relocating their base. But Hong Lian refused. Losing the oil refinery would mean losing their main source of resources. In frustration, she slammed her hand on the table. Even if it came at a great cost, they would endure. The assistant asked how they could survive if the zombies launched a full assault. Hong Lian ordered oil to be spread around the refinery. When the zombies came, they would ignite it, burning every single one of them. With a grim expression, the assistant suggested allowing soldiers' families to evacuate first, in case the situation spiraled out of control. Hong Lian agreed and gave the order to carry out the plan. At Zhang Yi's residence, the team returned safely. Zhao Qi'er brought him a cup of hot tea to warm him up and listened attentively to the mission's outcome. Zhang Yi admitted they'd run into some trouble, but assured her that everything would soon be resolved. Not long after, Xin and Karen arrived to ask about the situation, and discovered what he was planning. Zhang Yi asked how they could freeze large volumes of seawater quickly. Karen answered that it was possible using chemicals that accelerated the freezing process. She then asked what the purpose was. Zhang Yi explained that their plan was to freeze the entire subway system beneath the city. While not impossible, it would require careful preparation. He asked Karen to gather the necessary chemicals. There was no need to rush, what mattered was getting it right. Karen, energized by the challenge, promised to prepare everything they needed. It would be extremely useful. Zhang Yi informed them that by that evening, they would begin collecting seawater. A few hours later, the group got back into the vehicle and headed out to their destination. When they arrived at the coastline, Lien was stunned. The sea was completely frozen. Uncle Yu noted how calm the surface looked compared to the thick layers of snow they had seen elsewhere. Zhang Yi declared that they would need to drive across the ice until they reached the location suitable for water collection. 2 hours later, Chun-Lei spotted ocean waves ahead. Zhang Yi grew tense. This place was unstable. If anything went wrong, they could sink into the icy waters. Without delay, they exited the vehicle. Zhang Yi opened a dimensional portal, drawing in seawater and storing it in his extra-dimensional space. Uncle Yu, rubbing his hands for warmth, grumbled that if he had known they'd be coming here, he would have brought a fishing rod. Zhang Yi was intrigued by the idea, wondering aloud if they could build a lake at home and raise saltwater fish. Chun then suggested something more ambitious. Building a house by the sea as a place to escape to, in case their base fell into chaos. Zhang Yi agreed that having a backup plan was a good idea, but they needed to stay focused on solving the problem at hand. After collecting the seawater, Zhang Yi ordered everyone to return immediately. However, none of them noticed that the sea seemed to hold dangers and mysteries of its own. A few hours later, they arrived back home. Zhang Yi met with Karen in the laboratory to check on the necessary materials. Karen confirmed that everything was ready and easy to prepare. She showed him several buckets and explained how the chemical worked. It had to be mixed into the seawater to rapidly extract the salt. With reduced salinity, the seawater would freeze more quickly at low temperatures. The solution needed to remain in the water for at least 2 days to fully activate. The next morning, a warning echoed throughout the house. The base was under attack. Zhang Yi woke up to the blaring alarm, indicating that 1% of the base's structural integrity had been compromised. He opened a reinforced window and saw giant rats swarming the property, with dozens of zombies approaching as well. He questioned why rats would attack together with zombies. Or perhaps, they were already working together. The assault began damaging parts of the house, the sounds of destruction growing louder. Zhang Yi realized that although the base's defenses wouldn't be breached quickly, constant pressure could wear them down, like dripping water carving stone. He didn't want the rats to cause further structural damage. This, he concluded, was a test from the Zombie King, meant to gather information. He put on his winter gear and called the others to defend the territory. Outside, the team fought back and managed to eliminate all the giant rats and zombies. Zhang Yi estimated that if rats attacked daily for 2 years, they could eventually break through the base walls. He gathered everyone inside and stated firmly, this problem had to be resolved immediately. Elsewhere, at Choyu Base, after evaluating the risk, Wei Ding Tian decided to abandon the port and turn the tanker ship into their new headquarters. Even though they lost many resources, they would be safer on the water, far from the zombies. Meanwhile, at the Snow Sect, an attack had destroyed most of their servants. But the survivors now saw an opportunity. The meat of the giant rats was surprisingly delicious. They weren't too concerned about the zombie virus. The rat meat would feed them for several days. 2 days later, the plan to freeze the subway and trap the zombies was ready to begin. As expected, the water began to freeze after some time. Once the theory was confirmed, Zhang Yi called the team to carry it out in practice. They headed to the water channels along the subway line to set up explosives. All other exits had already been sealed to prevent zombies, or water, from escaping. Using the explosives, they destroyed and sealed every remaining exit. Chun-Lei asked if the Zombie King might still escape. Zhang Yi replied that it didn't matter. The goal wasn't to kill the zombies inside, but to force them out of the subway. What mattered most was keeping them away from their home. Lian then asked how they would survive if the whole world ended up overrun by zombies. Zhang Yi explained that the world might fall, whether through the virus or an ice apocalypse. And when that happened, zombies would change. The world would rebalance itself eventually. The most important thing was to survive. If protecting their base was the safest course of action, then that's what they would do. They finally arrived at the subway entrance and began flooding the tunnels. The rats ran deeper into the tunnels, trying to avoid the cold water. But nothing could outrun the tide that poured into the underground. Soon, the water reached the zombies buried deep in the tunnels. One by one, they were submerged. Eventually, the entire area was flooded. Afterward, they added Karen's chemical mixture to the water and began the freezing process. Within minutes, everything had frozen solid. Their problem was solved. Zhang Yi suggested they rest. The zombie rats still crawling outside would be handled by him. Everyone acknowledged Zhang Yi's strength. It was strange, but undeniably powerful. Lian asked Zhang Yi what they would do next. Zhang Yi explained that they needed to strike at the zombies and rats that had escaped. Because they remained a major threat, they couldn't afford to be caught off guard. It was better to kill more now than risk being overwhelmed later. Their goal now was to eliminate any remaining zombies they could find and prevent further spread. Zhang Yi and his team began hunting down the surviving zombies that hadn't been frozen. Elsewhere, the giant zombies had emerged. They were followed by a unique zombie, a white-furred, monkey-like creature. This unusual zombie appeared intelligent, commanding the giant zombies like soldiers. Once it received its orders, it led its followers to carry out the mission. At the Yanqing base, Hong Lian was preparing fuel from the refinery to create an unbreakable wall of fire around the headquarters, one that no zombie could pass through. This natural barrier, they hoped, would keep the undead out. Fire on snow was certainly strange, but who knew what it might melt away? Meanwhile, at the Qingfu base located underground, their leader was growing anxious. The battles against the zombies had been exhausting. They decided to retreat into the underground shelter, leaving the surface-level base for the zombies to overrun. They no longer needed the equipment above, and no one knew how to use it anyway. Back at Zhang Yi's base, Xin arrived with an important email she had just received. Zhang Yi was surprised. He hadn't expected this. The message was more shocking than a typical email. It revealed that a special team had arrived in the southern part of Tianhai City and invited them to a meeting point at 2:30 p.m. The guest list included Xing Tian from Qingfu Shelter, Xiao Honglian from Yanqing, and Wei Dinghai from Chouyu, Yuan Kongya, the leader of the Snow Temple, and Zhang Yi, known for being surrounded by several beautiful women. Thank you for following this storyline. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content so you won't miss updates on other exciting comic storylines.